everyone. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Welcome to another episode of Brown Girls Are Beautiful. I'm your hostess and your melanated queen, Seven Wonder. All right. Last night we had church. Okay. We had Sunday service in the evening. And we're not going to stop talking about these things. The title of this video, Are Melanated People Too Far Gone? Why do I say this? Because one thing we do know is that melanated people will do everything they can, excuse me, to uphold the oppressor's narratives, to, to uphold the oppressor's religion, right? When we speak on these things, people get very hypersensitive. It was all good in the neighborhood when I was talking about Charlie Kirk, when I was going in on that. But when we start telling the truth about other things that don't fit everyone's narrative, then it becomes a problem, right? And the reason why is because people have become complacent in what their beliefs are. And while I'm not attacking anyone's beliefs, faiths, or anything like that without being offensive, it is necessary that we speak things that are false and that we speak things that are true so that people can decipher and determine the difference. It is a very dangerous thing to only give someone one narrative of what the facts are without giving them the full story behind why they believe what they believe, right? Because we know that these indoctrination camps called public education, the school system, and also the churches are a very dangerous thing. This is how we, experience the brainwashing. It takes place at a very young age, ladies and gentlemen. And it is not until later in life that some people reach a point with when they become awakened and enlightened. Now, some of you will reach this stage in your life at a later state, at a later age, at a later time frame. And some of you are going through it now, a transitioning process where you start to understand that stuff is not making sense, things are not right. And what you have been fed have been lies, right? And then some people have recognized this much earlier. And when they questioned people about it or when they spoke about it, they were told to shut it down. We're not going to question this. We're not going to talk about it. This is what it is, right? But they could never really explain to you why it is the way that it is today. And really, it is all to uphold racism and what they call white supremacy. And you know that I always say anytime you have to lie about someone's history and erase people's history and keep them in oppression, keep them enslaved and keep rule and control over someone else, that means that you actually suffer from an inferiority complex. So what I would like to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, is I want you to recognize yourself as the divine beings that you are, because a lot of these creations that we're going over come from your lineage, your ancestors, and the people that preceded you before we got here. They're not going to tell you this, right? When we learn about history in school, it always goes back to slavery. That's the first time that melanated or Black history was introduced to me in fourth grade when I lived in Germany. We watched a slave movie, and I was told that this is where my culture, my people, and my history come from. Now, I want you to think about what this does to the psyche as a child, what this does to you as you continue to grow older and become an adult. You grow up thinking that at least you have a better life right now. Now, is this really a better life that we are at the bottom of the totem pole economically, financially, and even politically? Is this really living a better life, or are we still living in oppression? Are we still under their rule, right? Power and control. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you Stolen Legacy by George James, okay? And everybody, can purchase this book for themselves. But I'm going to actually skip through some of this, and I'm going to start here at part 1. This is chapter 1, Greek philosophy. Everybody keeps hearing about these Greeks and these Romans. Okay, the Greeks and the Romans. Everything we hear, the history always starts with them. Now, I want you to see how they reverse the narratives. And everything that they give to us, by the way, is always in reverse. And we always have to go through a maze and a puzzle to try to piece these things back together again. It says philosophy is stolen Egyptian philosophy, okay? Now I'm just going to read to you, and you can follow along if you like. Please make sure, if this is something you're interested in, that you please like the video, share the video. If you'd like to donate to the channel, that's BGAB Clothing. That is $ BGAB Clothing, everyone. It says the teachings of the Egyptian mysteries reached other lands many centuries before it reached Athens. According to history, Pythagoras, we already heard about Pythagoras, the Pythagorean theory from geometry when we were in school, and they were teaching us about math, right? And they said that this theory was from Pythagoras after receiving his training in Egypt. So, where did the Pythagorean theory come from, ladies and gentlemen? Well, it sounds like he had training in Egypt. But now, when we're taught in school, these philosophers that they tell us about always goes back to where? Greece and Roman, Greek and Roman. It says, after his training in Egypt, he returned to his native island, Samos, where he established his order for a short time, after which he migrated to Croton. That's 540 BC. By the way, BC means before Christ. So here's the thing. When we talk about and when we speak about religion, these things that I am referencing, according to this document, references before Christ. But everything that we hear in the churches, right, in this religion and Christianity talks about during Christ. Let's keep going, everyone. He migrated to Croton in southern Italy before Christ, where his order grew to enormous proportions until his final expulsion from that country. So they actually expelled him from the country. We are also told that, and I could be mispronouncing these names. I'm going to say Talis, 640 before Christ, who had also received his education in Egypt, and his associates Anaximander and Anaximenes were natives of Ionia in Asia Minor, which was a stronghold of the Egyptian mystery schools. Remember, last night I introduced you to this information about the Egyptian mysteries, right? Which they carried on. Okay, Sanford's the Mediterranean world. And then he also gives his sources and his page numbers so that you can go back and fact check. Because what did our teacher tell us always in school? Make sure you cite your sources. So you're going to see a lot of references to the sites and the sources that he got his information from when he wrote this book. Okay. All right. Let me go back, y'all. The Mediterranean world, page 195 to 205. Similarly, we are told that Xenophanes, 576 before Christ, Parmenides, Zeno, and Melissus were also natives of Ionia, and that they migrated to Alia in Italy and established themselves and spread the teachings of the mysteries. What did they do? Keyword here. They spread the teachings of the mysteries. Who are the mysteries? The mysteries came from Egypt because it was a mystery to them because they had no knowledge of it. Now, I want you to understand, before all of this was going on, these people were actually forbidden to come to Egypt. They were not even allowed to set foot across the border. Somehow they swindled their way over there and got their hands and got their way into getting the information of these mystery systems. In like manner, we are informed that Heraclitus, 530 BC, and Empedocles, Anaxagoras, and Democritus were also natives of Ionia who were interested in physics. Hence, in tracing the course of the so-called Greek philosophy, we find that Ionian students, after obtaining their education from the Egyptian priests, returned to their native land, while some of them migrated to different parts of Italy where they established themselves. Consequently, history makes it clear that the surrounding neighbors of Egypt had all become familiar with the teachings of Egyptian mysteries many centuries before the Athenians, who in 399 BC sentenced Socrates to death. Zeller's History of Philosophy, page 112, 127, and 170 to 172, and subsequently caused Plato and Aristotle to flee for their lives from Athens, because philosophy was something foreign and unknown to them. For this same reason, we would expect either the Ionians or the Italians to exert their prior claim to philosophy, since it made contact with them long before it did with the Athenians, who were always its greatest enemies until Alexander's conquest. Keyword: Alexander's conquest of Egypt, which provided for Aristotle free access to the Library of Alexandria. Again, free access to the Library of Alexandria. These are key phrases, key words here, everybody. All right. So, like I said, are melanated people too far gone? That's the question that I posed today. What's good, Lonesome Dove? How are you? Good AM to you. The Ionians and Italians made no attempt to claim the authorship the authorship of philosophy, because they were well aware that the Egyptians were the true authors. Let me read that again for all of you who did not hear it the first time. The Ionians and Italians made no attempt to claim the authorship of philosophy, because they were well aware that the Egyptians were the true authors. Who were the true authors, ladies and gentlemen? I have to quiz you like I would quiz the children in school. The Egyptians, right? On the other hand, after the death of Aristotle, his Athenian pupils, without the authority, and now who are pupils? Pupils are students that are studying. Without the authority of the state, undertook to compile a history of philosophy recognized at that time as the Sophia or wisdom of the Egyptians, which had become current and traditional in the ancient world, which compilation, because it was produced by pupils who had belonged to Aristotle's school, later history has erroneously called Greek philosophy, in spite of the fact that the Greeks were its greatest enemies and persecutors. Who were they? Greeks were its greatest enemies and persecutors, and had persistently treated it as foreign innovation. Treated as what? Foreign innovation. I have to repeat these things so it will stick. For this reason, the so-called Greek philosophy is stolen Egyptian philosophy. Again, it is stolen Egyptian philosophy, which first spread to Ionia, thence to Italy, and thence to Athens. And it must be remembered that at this remote period of Greek history, i.e., Thales to Aristotle, 640 BC to 322 BC, the Ionians were not Greek citizens, but at first Egyptian subjects and later Persian subjects, you all. All right, there is a Zeller's History of Philosophy that he refers to, and you can find all of the sources that he is citing right here. A brief sketch of the ancient Egyptian empire would also make it clear that Asia Minor, or Ionia, was the ancient land of the Hittites, who were not known by any other name in ancient days. According to Diodorus and Manetho, high priest in Egypt, 2 columns were found at Nysa, Arabia, one of the goddess Isis, and the other of the goddess Osiris, on the latter of which the god declared that he had led an army into India to the sources of the Danube and as far as the ocean. This means, of course, that the Egyptian Empire at a very early date included not only the islands of the Aegean Sea and Ionia, but also extended to the extremities of the east. We are also informed that Senusert the first during the 12th dynasty, and that's about 1900 BC before Christ, conquered the whole sea coast of India beyond the Ganges to the Eastern Ocean. He is also said to have included the Cyclades and a great part of Europe in his conquests. Secondly, the Amarna letters found in the government offices of the Egyptian king Akhenaten testified to the fact that the Egyptian empire had extended to Western Asia, Syria, and Palestine, and that for centuries Egyptian power had been supreme in the ancient world. This was in the 18th dynasty, i.e., about 1500 before Christ. We're also told that during the reign of Thutmosis III, the dominion of Egypt extended not only along the coast of Palestine, but also from Nubia to northern Asia. All right. And then he cites the sources. The authorship of the individual doctrines is extremely doubtful. As one attempts to read the history of the Greek philosophy, one discovers a complete absence of essential information concerning the early life and training of the so-called Greek philosophers. From Thales to Aristotle, no writer or historian professes to know anything about early education. All they tell us about them consists of a doubtful date and place of birth and their doctrines, but the world is left to wonder who they were and from what source they got their early education, and would naturally expect that men who rose to the position of a teacher among relatives, friends, and associates would be well known not only by them, but by the whole community. On the contrary, men who might well be placed among the earliest teachers in history, who had grown up from childhood to manhood and had taught pupils, are represented as unknown, being without any domestic, social, or early educational traces. This is unbelievable, and yet it is a fact that the history of Greek philosophy has presented to the world a number of men whose lives it knows little or nothing about, but expects the world to accept them as the true authors of the doctrines which are alleged to be theirs. In the absence of essential evidence, the world hesitates to recognize them as such, because the truth of this whole matter of Greek philosophy points to a very different direction. The book on nature, entitled uh, Physios, was the common name under which Greek students interested in nature study wrote. The earliest copy is said to date back to the 6th century BC, and it is customary to refer to the remnants of Physios as the fragments. William Turner's History of Philosophy, page 62. We do not believe that genuine initiates produced the book on nature, since this was contrary to the rules of the Egyptian mysteries. In connection with which the philosophical schools conducted their work, Egypt was the center of the body of ancient wisdom and knowledge. Let me say that again. Religious, philosophical, and scientific spread to other lands through students' initiates. Such teachings remained for generations and centuries in form of tradition until the conquest of Egypt by Alexander the Great. Let's look at that again. The conquest of Egypt by Alexander the Great. All right, and that's when things took a turn. And the movement of Aristotle and his school to compile Egyptian teaching and claim it as Greek philosophy. So they compiled Egyptian teaching and claimed it as Greek philosophy. Ancient Mysteries by C.H. Vail, page 16. Consequently, as a source of authority of authorships, Physios is of little value, if any, since history mentions only 4 names as authors of it, namely Anaximander, Heraclitus, Parmenides, Anaxagoras, and asked the world to accept their authorship of philosophy because Theophrastus, Sextus, Proclus and Simplicius of the school of Alexandria are said to have preserved small remnants of it, the fragments. If Pisios is the criterion to the authorship of Greek philosophy, then it falls short in its purpose by a long way, since only four philosophers are alleged to have written this book and to have remnants of their work. According to this idea, all the other philosophers who failed to write Periphyseos and to have remnants of it also failed to write Greek philosophy. This is the reductio ad absurdum to which Periphyseos leads us. The schools of philosophy, Chaldean, Greek, and Persian, were part of the ancient mystery system of Egypt. They were conducted in secrecy according to the demands of um, Asarasia, whose teachings became common to all the schools. In keeping with the demands for secrecy, the writing and publication of teachings were strictly forbidden, and consequently, initiates who had developed satisfactory in their training and had been advanced to the rank of master or teacher refrained from publishing the teachings of the mysteries or philosophy, you all. Consequently, any publication of philosophy could not have come from the pen of the original philosophers themselves, but either from their close friends who knew their views, as in the case of Pythagoras and Socrates, or from interested persons who made a record of these philosophical teachings that had become popular opinion and tradition. There is no wonder then that in the absence of original authorship, history has had to resort to the strategy of accepting Aristotle's opinion as the sole authority in determining the authorship of Greek philosophy. And then there are sources that are cited here. Introduction to Alfred Weber's History of Philosophy. It is for these reasons that great doubt surrounds the so called Greek authorship of philosophy. More sources are cited here. All right, let's keep going. The chronology of Greek philosophers is mere speculation. History knows nothing about the early life and training of the Greek philosophers, and this is true not only for Socratic philosophers, but also of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, who appear in history about the age of 18 and begin to teach at 40. As a body of men, they were undesirable to the state and were consequently persecuted and driven into hiding and secrecy. Under such circumstances, they kept no records of their activities, and this was done in order to conceal their identity. After the conquest of Egypt by Alexander the Great, and the seizure and looting, again, let me repeat that, and the seizure and looting of the royal library at Alexandria, Aristotle's plan to usurp, again, Aristotle's plan to usurp Egyptian philosophy was subsequently carried out by members of his school. Theophrastus, Andronicus of Rhodes, and Eudemus, who soon found themselves confronted with the problem of chronology for a history of philosophy. All right, sources are cited here again. Throughout this effort, there has been much speculation concerning the date of birth of philosophers whom the public knew very little about, as early as the 3rd century BC. Okay. It says here, Eratosthenes or Tosthenes, Stoic, drew up a chronology of Greek philosophers, and in the 2nd century BC, Apollodorus also drew up another. The effort continued, and in the 1st century BC, Andronicus, the 11th head of the Peripatetic school, also drew up another. This difficulty continued throughout the early centuries and has come down to the present time, for it appears that all modern writers on Greek philosophy are unable to agree on the dates that should be assigned to the nativity of the philosophers. The only exception appears to occur with reference to the three Athenian philosophers, i.e., Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, the date of whose nativity is believed to be certain and concerning which there is general agreement among historians. However, when we come to deal with the Socratic philosophers, we are confronted with confusion and uncertainty, and a few examples would serve to illustrate the untrustworthy nature of the chronology of Greek philosophers. Diogenes Laertius places the birth of Thales at 640 BC, while William Turner's History of Philosophy places it at 620 BC, that of Frank Thilly at 624 BC, that of A.K. Rogers at early in the 6th century BC, and that of W.G. Tinneman at 600 BC. Diogenes Laertius places the birth of Anaximenes at 546 BC. So they all have conflicting times and dates of the births. Okay, so let me skip past that. All right, let's keep going. He keeps going and gives references into all of these contradictions and stuff like that. Let me see. Let's keep going. So there are a lot of conflicting dates, is what he's saying. This is what this is mainly about. All right, I'm gonna keep going. All right, it says here, when Aristotle decided to compile a history of Greek philosophy, he must have made known his wishes to his pupils, Theophrastus and Eudemus, for no sooner did he produce his metaphysics than Theophrastus followed him by publishing 18 books on the doctrines of the physicists. Similarly, after Theophrastus had published his doctrines of the physicists, Eudemus produced separate histories of arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and also theology. So we all know that this basically did derive from Egypt, the Egyptian mystery systems. So again, astronomy, theology, arithmetic, and geometry. And remember, we've always heard about the Pythagorean theory when we study geometry, and they accredit that to Pythagoras, or the Pythagorean theory, but we know that he got his knowledge from the Egyptians. So they're never credited when we study these things in school. This was an amazing start because of the large number of scientific books and the wide range of subjects treated. This situation, oh gosh, my cat just messed with my screen, y'all. Hold on. Wide range of subjects treated. This situation has rightly aroused the suspicion of the world as it questions the source of these scientific works, since Theophrastus, and Eudemus were students under Aristotle at the same time, and since the conquest of Egypt by Alexander the Great made the Egyptian library at Alexandria available to the Greeks for research, then it must be expected that the three men, Aristotle, who was a close friend of Alexandra, Theophrastus, and Eudemus, not only did research at the Alexandrian library at the same time, but must have helped themselves to books which enabled them to follow each other so closely in the production of scientific works, y'all. This is craziness. Which were either a portion of the war booty. And when they say booty, y'all, when people so you need to do research on what that means. Okay, it's basically things that were conquered in war, taken from the library, or compilations from them. Okay, note that Aristotle's works revealed the signs of note taking, and that Theophrastus and Eudemus were pupils attending Aristotle's school at the same time, and he gives references. Just here might it be as well to mention the names of Aristotle's pupils who took an active part in promoting the movement towards the compilation of a history of Greek philosophy. It says, as elsewhere mentioned, he is said to have produced 18 books on the doctrines of physicists. Who were these physicists? It says Greek or Egyptians, question mark. Just think of Eudemus of Rhodes, a contemporary of Theophrastus, with whom he also attended Aristotle's school. He is said to have produced histories of arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and theology. As elsewhere mentioned, what was the source of the data of the histories of these sciences, which must have taken any nation thousands of years to develop? Question mark. Greece or Egypt? Just think of it. All right. These men's works together with Aristotle's metaphysics, which contain a critical summary of the doctrines of all preceding philosophers, seem to form the nucleus of a compilation of what has been called the history of Greek philosophy. All right. And then there's a reference point. The next movement was the organization of an association called the Learned Study of Aristotle's Writings, whose members were Theophrastus and Andronicus, who were both closely connected with the school of Aristotle. The function of this association was to identify the literature and doctrines of philosophy with their so-called respective authors. And in order to accomplish this, the alumni of Aristotle's school and its friends were encouraged to enter upon a research for Aristotle's works and to write commentaries on them. In addition to this, the Learned Association also encouraged research for the recovery of what has been named fragments or remnants of a book, which is supposed to have once existed and to have borne the common title Phaisios, i.e., concerning nature. Here again, those who went out in search of Phaisios or its remnants were the alumni of Aristotle's school and its friends, but their efforts to establish authorship was a failure. Theophrastus found only 2 lines of Phaisios, supposed to have been written by Anaximander. Sextus and Proclus of the 5th century AD and Simplicius of the 6th century AD are said to have found a copy of Phaisios supposed to have been produced by Parmenides. In addition, the name of Simplicius is also associated with a copy of Phaisios, which is supposed to have been produced by Anaxagoras. So much for Phaisios and the fragments, and so much for the attempt of the Learned Association for the study of Aristotle's works, which has failed because of lack of evidence, as has elsewhere been pointed out. The recovery of 2 copies and 2 lines of Phaisios is not proof that all Greek philosophers wrote Phaisios, or even that the names assigned to them were their bona fide authors. It certainly would appear that the object of the Learned Association was to beat Aristotle's own drum and dance. It was Aristotle's idea to compile a history of philosophy, and it was Aristotle's school and its alumni that carried out the idea, we are told. That is the end of chapter 1. This is chapter 2. So-called Greek philosophy was alien to the Greeks and their conditions of life. Now, I don't know if we should stop here or keep going, you all. I think that is probably about enough, and I will probably come back on here a little bit later. You said this, Ross said the seizure and looting, right? Got it. Yep, that's exactly what happened. So I'll probably come back on here later and we'll go over chapter 2 because I really have things to do. I should have been already gone today, but I decided, hey, my cat is right here. I decided to come on here and just, talk to you all about this because I feel like this is a extremely important information that gets left out a lot of times when we go over this information. And Ross, I see that you are very fixated on Brown Girls Are Beautiful's channel. I don't know why. And see, this is the nature of these beasts, right? Whenever we start talking about something that has really nothing to do with them, they become fixated on us, right? You see that I have been stalked and harassed and targeted by this individual right here that keeps changing their screen names because this is what they do. They're hit dogs, they're hollering, and they don't like when the truth is revealed about them. So, my ladies and my gentlemen, my melanated people, whenever you think of these creatures, right, and what they have done in history and what they have lied about, when it goes to everything that they steal, including our freedom at one point, why don't you think they would steal anything from you and remix it and claim it as their own, including religion? Why do you think if they did this in Egypt with philosophy, with geometry, with astronomy, with all of these things, why do you not think they would steal your spirituality and then pretend like it's their own? If they stole you from your land, they stole you from your, they steal everything. And so it is no difference than what they're doing today when they invade these other countries, when they send us to war, when these innocent military young soldiers in their 19 years old, 20 years old, early 20s go over there losing limbs, all in the name of what? Because they want to conquer other territories, y'all. It's greed. These people are greedy. They care nothing about you. They take everything from you. And this is why, hence, the racism continues, because it's like envy and jealousy fixated in hate. They envy you and hate you at the same time. Y'all think I am making up stuff, but one day I'm going to come on here and I am going to play for you how Caucasians will hire melanated men to be intimate with their wives. Y'all think they don't do this, but they do. Okay. I even had a colleague that told me that he partook in some of these practices. And when he was telling me about this, I just looked at him like, okay, because obviously this is stuff that people are into. But yeah, so when you think about the hatred of them, a lot of it is envy, a lot of it is jealousy. And you can see how they look at you sometimes, even the females, even the women. When they look at you, melanated women, like in angst and disgust, it's because there's something about you that they are envious of. They're not ever going to admit this, right? They're never going to admit it, but they're going to challenge you at everything because they think their white way, way is the right way. And simply, it is simply not. Everything predates them and they're mad about it. Everything goes back before their time and they're angry about it. And now that we see the fall of the Charlie Kirk situation has gone down, they have no one to blame but each other, no one to blame but themselves. But yet, they find their way over to, melanated people's HBCUs to try to blame them for it when we had nothing to do with that, right? You're not going to find us out in Utah going to these rallies because we care nothing about Charlie Kirk like that. But because Charlie Kirk preached a lot of their rhetoric, the hit dogs were hollering and they're still squealing about it. And they want someone to feel empathy and sympathy for somebody that one of their very own had something to do with. Now, I still beg the question, was this all a psyop? Was this all a psyop and was Charlie Kirk involved? Because we know that they lie about everything. As we have clearly seen in history and time, everything is a lie. Please check out Everything is a Rich Man's Trick because they lied about the assassination of JFK. That's all they do. This is the nature of their beastly savage ways, right? They're depraved in nature. They can't help themselves. And so when you start speaking the truth about it, they can't handle it. They get mad and they get angry. And then they resort to name calling and blaming and talking about you have a low level IQ when everything that we keep uncovering shows their lies, right? And it's really that they have a mental illness inside that they need to fix within themselves. And so this white Christian religion that they have fixated themselves upon and tried to, spread across this world, they don't even believe in that religion, you all. Because if they did, that they would act accordingly as such. They would actually believe these words that are in that Bible that they've pillaged and stole the 26 chapters out of, right? Because we just heard and we just went over that last night with Dr. Phil Valentine. And if you didn't do your research, then you would know that you can go back and fact check some of this stuff. But a lot of melanated people don't do research and don't read, don't study yourselves. This is why they take advantage of you. This is why they keep lying to you, and you keep believing them. You keep believing the doctors that lie to you, that tell you you need surgery. You keep listening to the white lab coats that are experimenting on you when you know you have been experimented on for many years. You even have some of the Caucasians telling you this, that this is what they do to you, and you still don't want to believe it. When a melanated person tells you something, you don't want to believe it. You're met with adversity. And this is why you're so far at the bottom on the totem pole when it comes to economics, when it comes to politics. You have no political pull in this nation, and it is your own fault at this point. And when people start telling the truth, you also become a hit dog hollering. And I don't like this, and I'm going to unsubscribe, and that's fine. I'm going to click off the channel, and that's fine. It does not negate the truth. Just because you don't want to hear it does not make it untrue. And that is a thing that melanated people need to get through their brains. They don't like hearing the truth, right? And so this will cause you to be handicapped because people cannot continue to paint a beautiful life for you. Look at what's going on in this country right now. The ICE people have come knocking down people's doors, going in their houses, and zip tying their children. What are melanated people going to do? Keep turning a blind eye to this? You don't want to see their beastly ways and their savagery for what they really are about. They will zip tie your children and your babies, and you will still believe in their rhetoric and their white Christianity religion. And then turn around and get mad at me and say, how is this a white religion? You don't research. Have you not been listening? Have you not been researching? No, because you don't feel the need to do so. You think the white way is the right way because you have a white mind. And so they have poisoned your mind the same way they poisoned your food, the same way they poison your air, the same way they put the chemtrails in the air, the same way they poison your water with fluoride and chlorine. But yet you believe everything about their white doctrine when it comes to these religious practices. And there's no way to get you out of it and negate these things because you have been whitewashed. You have been brainwashed. Somebody needs to tell you the truth because it is mental illness going on out here. That is mental insanity. And if nobody else told you, I'm telling you today, you can get mad all you want. I really don't care. That is what it is, y'all. So anyway, heute is Montag. Go out and make Monday a prosperous day. All right. Um, Go out and make it a miraculous day, a magical Monday, right? There's nothing wrong with practicing your magical practices. It is too far gone that these white people have told you not to practice what is innately designed in you. And that is you becoming one with the universe and using nature, okay, at your will to cause your prosperity. And you can do this by practices of simple herbs in the earth. It was put here for us to utilize for ourselves, for our power. And because you have been told that these things are evil and demonic, you turn away from it. You turn away from your spiritual practices. You turn away from your lineage. You turn away from your ancestors. And on top of it, we see that Halloween is coming up, and I want to speak to that as well, because it's not about witches and goblins and ghosts. Oh my. It's not about dressing up. You people are making a mockery of your ancestors. That's what you're doing. Y'all are talking about ghosts. People connect with their spirits. Spirits are people that could be your ancestors that come back to visit you, that look out for you in the spiritual world. But because you have no understanding of your spirituality, you have allowed these white devils to come over here and take part in something that they know nothing about. Witches can be good, witches can be bad. There is a thing as black magic and a thing as and they always try to say black magic is bad because any connotation with black in it, they have remixed it and made it bad, right? So there's a such thing as what they call black magic, or you could say is dark magic. So dark magic is the practice of evil, but you can also use magic for good. What do you think Jesus did when he turned water into wine or wine into water. That was magic. When he was touching people and healing them, was that not a form of sorcery and magic and witchcraft? Y'all, it's all in the Bible, but you fear what you don't know because you don't study. You're drinking blood, right? This wine is supposed to represent blood. Well, what do you think people do when they do these satanic worships and practices? They drink blood, y'all. You don't believe me? Go back and research Queen Elizabeth and look up Arizona Wilder and look up spirit cooking. What do they do with children in these sacrifices, y'all? So what are y'all practicing in these Christian churches? What do you think they're doing to your minds? Y'all, people need to really, really just research some stuff out here. You're practicing Halloween and don't even know what this is about. Go do some research into these holidays, y'all. People talking about, oh, that's demonic, that's satanic. Why is it demonic and satanic? Because they've twisted it around. Everything they teach you is backwards. You should know this by now. You should understand the nature of these creatures, how they pillage and steal things for themselves and said they were the ones that were the author of everything. They were the ones, this is where you get this from. People don't want to research. And this is why, like Dr. Phil Valentine said, you continue to suffer. This is why you're still at the bottom of the totem pole, because they have taken everything from you and given you their religion, and you have faith in their religion, their Christianity, their Jesus. When you don't even look back to the history of where all of this stuff derives. So at this point, I can't feel sorry for people that continue to be victimized, continue to carry on this victimhood and this victim mentality at this point. Like I said, there are too many resources at your disposal not to go through and figure this stuff out. At least have a conversation about it. But when anybody tries to talk about it, oh, I don't want to hear that. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're whitewashed. You're brainwashed. You're too far gone. Nobody can do anything with you at this point. And that's exactly, they have you exactly where they want you. So anyway, I'm going to get off of here because I have stuff to do. And, like the video, share the video, and subscribe. And please unsubscribe if you can't handle the truth. I'd rather for you to be gone, because I'm not going to argue with anyone back and forth in the comment section about this. I'm just not going to do it. I don't have time for ignorance, right? You want to be ignorant, go be ignorant somewhere else. And we're going to touch on, and we're going to study how people connected with their spirits and ancestors, because this is nothing to be scared about. It's not about playing with ghosts. You are very disrespectful to your ancestors when you say that. People that have already gone and left this earthly realm, and they are still here, because we know energy, we are energy. We transform. That doesn't mean we're dead spiritually. That means the body has died, because it's a physical thing that does not live in this realm anymore. Because y'all don't have any understanding of spirituality and of metaphysics and of quantum physics. You have a very one level mind. It's a 3D mindset. And if people, who's challenging me, Ross? Because you're certainly not a challenge. And if people would get their minds off of celebrities all the time and listening to all this unruly music, and understand that entertainment is just simply that, is entertainment, and tap into themselves, their inner selves, and go quiet sometimes, and stop going out to the clubs, stop smoking weed all the time, stop doing all these things, drinking at the ABC store. Y'all are fixated on the wrong things, and a lot of people are going to be right where they are at. They're not going to elevate at all. They're going to continue to be left in the same state of confusion where they are, because they have a very one-dimensional mind, and it's really sad to see. It's really sad to see. So I don't really have time for folly, right? If you are full of folly, stay off my channel, and please unsubscribe. I don't have time for that. I am into people who have elevated minds and people who have open minds. If you have a closed mindset, this channel is not for you. And I don't need your energy here, and I'd rather for you to go. All right. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and sign out of here. This has been an episode with yours truly, Brown Girls Are Beautiful. Continue to walk in your divinity, celebrate yourself, and as always, stay blessed. Until next time, y'all, be prosperous, all right?